So if you've correctly followed all the steps in this series so far, then ideally you should already have your startup visa in your hand. And so today, for part 4 of this series, I would like to give you a brief overview of what comes next in your entrepreneurial journey in Japan. And that is how to evolve from a startup to the actual business manager visa in Japan. And so if that's something that interests you, then make sure you stick around until the end of the video to make sure that you know how to use all these tools properly for the success of your business. And also at the very end, it's going to be a very important point that you're not going to want to miss. So with that out of the way, let's get started. Now, we'll start first by covering a few key differences between the startup visa and the business manager visa. And in that regard, one of the main things you have to keep in mind is that your startup visa is a very temporary visa. So in previous videos, I've said that the startup visa has a duration of 6 months to 1 year. And while that used to be the case, let me correct myself by saying that it was quickly brought to my attention that as of January 1st of 2025, the startup visa now has a duration of 2 years. You heard that right? That's 2 years. So I guess that's very good news for all of us, and now all you have to do is make sure you use all that time to your advantage. Having said that, the business manager visa, on the other hand, actually allows you to stay for up to 5 years working on the growth of your business, and that's without including any visa renewals. So eventually, in theory, you could stay for even longer. Now, as for the main purpose of the visa, you have to keep in mind, of course, that the startup program is mainly aimed towards foreign entrepreneurs who want to come to Japan and create their own businesses from zero. But once you're actually able to get things started and get your business off the ground, then the startup visa is no longer of any use to you. And that's actually when you have to level up and apply for higher level visas, such as the business manager visa. And of course, the purpose of this visa is to allow you to stay in the country for the long term and work on cultivating and growing your own business. Now, when it comes to the actual transition requirements, there's a few very specific criteria that you have to meet during your startup period in order to be able to qualify for your business manager visa. And I'll be briefly covering these requirements in this video, but I'm thinking of going in depth on another series on this channel, much like the series you're watching right now, where I'll be going into full detail on everything you need to know in order to successfully apply for your business manager visa. And so if you think that's a good idea and it's something you'd like, then make sure you leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. Now, when it comes to the actual requirements, one of the main things you have to keep in mind is that when you apply for your business manager visa, you have to have a minimum capital of at least 5 million yen. And this could be either in the form of business revenue or your own personal funds, your personal investments. Alternatively, if you're not able to meet the capital requirements, or if you decide to not go for that option, you also have the option of having at least 2 full-time employees. Now, let me be clear. They're giving you the option of going one way or another. So this means that you don't need to have 2 full-time employees and 5 million yen in capital. However, like I've said before, the better you present your case, the better your chances will be. So if you find yourself in a position where you can actually have 2 full-time employees and have the necessary capital on the side, then you can be sure that you'll be maximizing your chances of success. Think about it this way. These are actually the minimum requirements to get accepted. So if they're telling you can either go for this or for that, how about you make a little bit more than minimum effort and actually get both? Like this, you'll actually have the odds in your favor, because on top of this, you'll also have to show that your company is in good enough financial health to actually cover all the operational costs, all the employee salaries, as well as the future growth of your business. On top of that, you have to keep in mind that for the business manager visa, company registration is mandatory. This means that unlike the startup visa, where you didn't really need to worry about those things at the time, the business manager visa actually requires a fully registered and operational business. And obviously that also means filing your taxes properly, maintaining proper accounting records, and complying with all the necessary Japanese laws in order to be able to qualify. And of course you understand that just saying that you're doing these things or saying that you have these things is not enough. You'll actually have authorities come to assess the viability and the health of your business before you can actually apply. So these are all very important points that you should keep in mind. So now that we've briefly covered the main requirements, in the next section of this video we'll be covering the actual steps you need to take in order to successfully transition from a startup into a business manager. But before we move on, let me just mention once again that if you're enjoying this series and you're finding the information useful, then please feel free to like the video and share it with anyone you can. I really appreciate the support. Now, the very first thing you need to do to transition from your startup to the business manager visa is actually choosing your business structure. You'll basically have to decide whether it'll be a kabushiki gaisha or a godo gaisha. That's basically the equivalent of having a joint stock corporation or an LLC. And basically it'll all depend on the size of your business, and of course they all come with very different legal and taxing structures as well. Now after that you actually have to go and get a proper office for your business, because unlike the startup visa, in most cases, for the business manager visa, a home office might not be enough to qualify. Now, after that, certain industries like real estate, the food industry and finance require certain licenses in order to be able to operate freely in the country. So if you're running any of those kinds of businesses, you have to make sure that you have all your licenses and permits in order before you apply. Now, these are basically the general requirements, but there's also a few financial requirements that you'll have to meet. The first of which is actually being able to show that your business is generating enough income or securing enough investments to sustain operations. And this will all have to be reflected in your bank statements. That's where you actually have to show that you have your 5 million yen in capital, or that you have enough payroll to actually cover the salaries of your 2 full-time employees, depending on which path you actually go for. And then of course you have to show that your taxes are in order. This means actually filing corporate taxes on time and making sure that you're running a profitable operation. Then on top of that, of course, normally, like I mentioned in previous parts of this series as well, for the startup visa, for the business manager visa, you'll also have to submit growth reports, providing documents outlining your business strategy, your market position, as well as your plans for expansion into the future. Because remember, if you want to come to Japan and have your business here for many years, you have to show that it can be profitable in the long term as well. And of course, I don't think I need to say this, but you have to make sure that all your immigration matters are in order. Because any visa violation is just a sure way of getting your application rejected and yourself very likely very out of the country very quickly. So don't be silly. But anyways, now onto one of the most crucial things that you have to keep in mind, and that's actually the very important point that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. And that's the fact that if you're able to create a solid business in this country with a strong customer base, and you're actually able to show the government that your business can grow into the future, you may be able to apply for a permanent residence in Japan. This means that if you wish, you could eventually, in theory, stay in this country for a very long time, forever. Remember that unless you have a Japanese spouse, Japanese family, or you've already been living in this country for a very long time, this is actually one of the most reliable ways to actually get a permanent residence in Japan, actually running a profitable, successful business in the country. But like I said before, you actually have to be able to prove to the government that your business is, well, successful, and that it's actually stimulating the economy enough for them to want to keep you in the country. That means you have to show consistent revenue generation and enough growth, interest and demand over time. So if you have a business that's generating a couple of low ticket sales a month, you might have the odds against you. There has to be enough interest for your services. You have to be able to build networks and partnerships with international and local businesses as well. This means actually collaborating with Japanese suppliers, clients, and industry networks in order to grow the credibility of your business. But there are many other things you can do in your favor as well. Like I've mentioned before, there are many government-sponsored networking events, mentorship programs, and even advisory services that you can use for this precise purpose. And if you actually do all this in the right way and comply with all the laws and actually show the growth and success of your business, you could in a very short time apply for a permanent residence. And by a short time, I mean as shortly as 3 years. Granted that you cover all the necessary requirements. Now, that's a whole other process that I can also cover in later videos on this channel. But for the time being, like I mentioned earlier, I'll be creating another series where I'll go over everything you need to know about the business manager visa. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. In the meantime, I'll leave you with another very important video right here. So go watch it, and I'll see you next time.